baby, right back in to the action for another day of the week. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Before You Bet. Airing live right now on the Covers YouTube and X Channel is coming off a great big day yesterday. 3-0 in Major League Baseball, 4-1 overall in MLB. We'll be talking some more baseball in the back half of the show. But like I said yesterday, this is a football first program right through the Super Bowl. Very excited to be welcoming back professional sports bettor Hitman. He'll be giving us some insights, some opinions, some analysis for the upcoming season. Going to get a sense of what he likes, maybe some tips, maybe some stuff here for week one that you can bet right now. Isn't it so exciting seeing all these lines on the board? Okay, so great show yesterday with Brad Powers. A lot of you guys tuned in. Maybe some of you guys did tune in for the first time. If you're tuning in today for the first time, and if you are not subscribed to the Covers YouTube channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button right down there. And if you guys want to participate in the show, very easy to do so. Hit up that live chat on YouTube, over on X. Let us know what some of your favorite futures bets are for the NFL season. Have you bet anything for week one yet? Also, good looking board here. Major League Baseball, we're not forgetting about baseball. A lot of good-looking betting opportunities. NASCAR expert in the live chat. Let's go. We're not talking any NASCAR on the show today, but he's saying let's party. And Nick Newport Jr., he is back as well. Let's go, baby. Indeed. Okay, so let's go. Let's talk a little 2024 NFL season with our guy, one of our favorites around here. He is back for another season on Before You Bet. This time around, he's going to be on the show every Tuesday. Maybe look to get ahead of some of these lines for the week ahead. Very excited to have him back. Hitman, what's going on?
Joe, I'm happy to be talking to you again. It's been a long 6 months, but we are back.
I appreciate you dressing up for us here, too. A designer white T-shirt. What brand is that, by the way?
You know what? I don't do my shopping. My wife does my shopping. She just throws something out and she just says, this is what you're wearing today. This is how you got to present yourself. So I gave up on my appearance a long time ago. You know, I'm already starting to lose a little bit of hair in the front. I gave up. So I couldn't even tell you. I'm just sure that she spent money, a lot of money on it.
I think you look good, man. You got Propecia, Rogaine, specialty shampoos, a somewhat of a healthy lifestyle.
Like a turkey, yep.
Yeah, there we go. Jeff Rappaport in the live chat, the GOAT of NFL prop betting. Indeed. So we're going to get some insights from you there. But let's start with this. Let's get a sense of what you like coming into the season. Now, I understand that some of these numbers might not be available right now, but what are some of the favorite futures bets that you've placed coming into the season here?
Well, this one's still available. I like the Raiders under season wins, 6.5. I think you can find like plus 120-ish, plus 125-ish. I'm pretty anti Antonio Pierce this year. I know that they ended the year very strongly, but a lot of it, in my opinion, was just on some pretty non-sustainable stuff. Some turnover luck. I mean, I remember specifically the Kansas City game where they didn't complete a pass, I think, for the last 2.5 quarters and still won that game. They closed the year like that, but I just don't see the talent on the roster and the coaching, to be honest. I mean, the offensive line is definitely a weakness. Obviously, you have arguably the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. I think that Gardner Minshew unders at DraftKings are worth a bet. I think he's in the 2,800-ish passing yards and 18.5 passing touchdowns. Could definitely see a point where they're switching between Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew. I think that there's a possibility that Devontae Adams ends up being a trade candidate if this team doesn't start out well. So probably the one team that I bet the most on as far as the season wins, but also bet against them in a few game of the year lines this year has been the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I'm aligned with you on the Raiders. I think with Antonio Pierce, they kind of got backed into a corner of needing to hire the guy because remember they had the interim coach before, and that guy got them into the playoffs, and they didn't retain him, and then they go and hire that bum Josh McDaniels, and Pierce comes in, complete 180 from McDaniels, and all the players wanted him back. Now what we have there in Las Vegas, maybe the worst or one of the worst head coach quarterback pairings in the NFL. I kind of like the Raiders 12-1 to be the worst team in the NFL this season. I think that the Broncos could be a little sneaky in that division as well.
And one other thing, if anybody's going to be in Vegas in the next 2 weeks, or they live in near Vegas or whatever, if you do like the Raiders under season wins, you can find some really generous prices on Raiders unders in there, just because the local team, I'm sure they're getting a lot of bets, a lot of $200 bets to go over this year. The liability adds up a little bit. So, shop around, especially if you are going to be in that area for some anti-Raiders stuff.
Okay, nice little tip for anybody who is traveling to Las Vegas or currently living in Las Vegas. Okay, so we were talking before the show started, and you were telling us how busy you were during the NFL preseason. A lot of action for you that time of year. A lot of people, you kind of tune in and tune out. You see the starting quarterback comes in for a series, and you might switch over to some baseball or not even watch the rest of the game. But any big takeaways from the preseason that you can apply to week 1 and beyond with your betting?
Probably the big thing with preseason I'm looking at when it comes to applying it to the regular season, I'm just looking at a usage stuff, like on certain players, like specifically what players are playing with the starters. Like I'll give you a good example. I've been pretty anti Tony Pollard this offseason. I got some good numbers on it. I'm not looking to bet Pollard overs right now in the season-long markets, but Tony Pollard played pretty much exclusively with the Titan starters in the week 3 preseason game against the Saints, and Tajay Spears really didn't mix in as much as some people anticipated. So that's something that you could just look at. That's an example of what you can look at in the preseason and like try to apply it to like week 1 prop betting. So, this team kind of showed us that Tony Pollard is clearly the number 1 guy possibly right now over Tajay Spears. So that's like some of the usage stuff that I look at. And then the other thing that I look at that I try to apply to the regular season is I like to look at the rookies, specifically the rookie quarterbacks, and just try to get a feel for how they're playing. Now, it's not the end-all be-all how they play in the preseason. I remember watching C.J. Stroud in his first preseason game against the Patriots last year, and I was like, oh, man, it's probably going to be a long year for Houston. He ended up having one of the best rookie seasons for a quarterback of all time. So you can't just blindly do it, but I do like to watch all the rookie quarterbacks, see how they perform, and try to get a feel for how I'm going to rate them going into the season. I thought that Caleb Williams was very impressive, and I think that Caleb Williams is a guy that I'll make a bold statement. We'll be calling him at the end of this season. We'll be saying he's a top 10 quarterback already. That's a bold. Is it even that bold? I don't know. It's a maybe.
He is set up to succeed better than any early selection quarterback in a very long time. Now, Mahomes, of course, came in. He had Andy Reid, Kelsey, and Tyreek Hill, but he also sat for the entire first season. Now, awesome skill players all around him, receivers 1 through 3, pretty good tight end pairing, good backfield for him. So he is absolutely set up to succeed, Caleb Williams. So, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he's a top 10 quarterback by the time the season is done. Okay, so one of our viewers here called you the GOAT of NFL prop betting. So we got to know, is there anybody that you're especially high on coming into the season that you're going to have on your radar here in weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4?
It's tough to say, like, as far as like for props, just because you don't know the numbers. I might be high on someone and then the market's high on them, or maybe the market's even higher than I am. And I'm like, oh, I like this guy to go under now. But three players that I'm kind of targeting, like especially in fantasy drafts, for example, that I just think are going to have really good years, maybe a little bit undervalued, and they're good players. But Garrett Wilson, I'm very high on. I bet him to lead the league in receiving yards at plus 2,000. I also played some alternates on receiving touchdowns, 10 plus, 13 plus. I don't remember the exact prices I got on them, but I just think that Wilson is set up. Like if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, like this is the Devontae Adams from Rodgers' 2 MVP years, where if you remember, Green Bay didn't have a ton of other great skill position players. It was like Robert Tonyan, Marquez Valdez, Scantling. Aaron Jones was now the Jets version of Breece Hall for the Jets. And Rodgers is a guy that he's going to throw to the guys he trusts. And right now, if you look at the Jets roster, as far as the pass catchers go, Mike Williams hasn't practiced all offseason. Who knows how long it takes to get him acclimated. Garrett Wilson's target share is just going to be absolutely insane, in my opinion. So, and he's a hell of a player too, considering that he has 1,000-yard seasons every year with Zach Wilson and Trevor Siemian as his quarterbacks. So I'm high on Wilson. Bijan Robinson, I think that's finally a year where Tyler Algier isn't splitting carries with him, and Bijan shows us why he was such an early pick behind the top 5 offensive line for the Falcons. And Nico Collins, I think that he is clearly the wide receiver 1 for Houston. So that's, some people might say like, oh, it could be Diggs, it could be Tank Dell. There's a little bit of a debate on who's the top guy is there. I thought that Nico Collins last year, the combination of size and speed and run after the catch really blew me away. So I've been high on him.
Okay, so those are some players on your radar here early in the season. So in terms of overall team performance, what would you say is your hottest take or boldest prediction?
Vikings are like last year's Buccaneers, where they could sneak to a 9-8 record. Maybe they're not going to win the division because they're not playing in the NFC South, but sneak into a wild card, and maybe Sam Darnold has a Baker Mayfield type resurrection season. Mike Tomlin has his first losing season. I want to see if they do get Brandon Ayuk or not. It's before I bet much involving them, but I'd say Tomlin has his first losing season as the Steelers head coach. And Eagles, they win the NFC. That is another bold. That's the only bet I've made as far as a team to win the Super Bowl, NFC, AFC. It's not a market that I typically get involved in much. That is the only bet I have made. I believe I made it at 7-1 earlier in the offseason that the Eagles will win the NFC.
Yeah, the Eagles are a team I can't totally figure out. Big upgrades at both coordinators for them. Who knows about the offensive line? Of course, the wheels really fell off for them down the stretch last season. So let's see how Jalen Hurts plays behind that rebuilt offensive line. And Kellen Moore calling plays there for him. Okay, let's go big here. What's your Super Bowl prediction? Who's beating whom?
Well, I already gave you one team, so you could guess the NFC. I'm going to go with the Eagles for the NFC. Yeah. And, it's funny. In all the years that I've done content, I think I've been asked this question for like the last 6 years about the AFC. And I think I've picked Kansas City every single year. Yeah. And you know what? I've been right probably as much as anybody in the country right now, just making that pick every year. And, I just think that the Chiefs have gotten better this offseason. I know that they lost L'Jarius Sneed at corner. That is a blow. But I think that the difference, especially when they get Hollywood Brown healthy, the fact that you now have 2 wide receivers on the outside and Worthy and Brown, that teams are going to have to play 2 deep coverage against. And then when you look at the underneath guys, like Kansas City has a good O-line. They can run the ball if you're playing 2 safeties back. They have Travis Kelce over the middle, obviously, and Rashee Rice looks like he's not going to get suspended this year, possibly. Yeah. So I think that it has potential to be the best Chiefs offense that we've seen since Tyreek Hill was on the team.
Yeah, I agree with you with Kansas City. I know it's hard to repeat, but I think they're better than it's hard to three-peat, and they're better than the team last year, especially on the offensive side of the football. Chiefs second half unders last year. I don't think that's going to continue here in 2024. Now, any of these teams at the top of the Super Bowl futures odds board that you just don't see it, maybe a down year. We're always already seeing some red flags here with the 49ers. The Ravens lost their defensive coordinator, took the head coach job with the Seahawks. Any teams you're down on?
Like obviously when I'm down on this team, it's like compared to last year, probably Baltimore. I would say I think that the offensive line could be an issue for Baltimore, and I also think that losing Mike McDonald was a really underrated loss, and he did a lot of good things for a team that like Baltimore. isn't the best pass rush in the world. Like, they don't have a great 4-man pass rush. It's just that their schemes were so good last year with Mike McDonald. So I think that Baltimore is a little bit to worry about on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And maybe they're one of the top teams that I'm like, you know what, last year might have been their year and they didn't get it done.
Okay, last but not least, next week on your Tuesday appearance, we're going to jump headfirst into week one picks. But give us a little appetizer. Looking at the board right now, what is your favorite spread or total that's available to bet?
Minnesota Vikings. I spoke about how I thought that they were undervalued. I'm pretty anti-Giants this year. I think that it was just a team that, if you look at some of last year's stats, obviously they didn't have Daniel Jones for a good portion of the year, but the offensive line was 31st in pressure rate allowed. They led the NFL in EPA gained off turnovers, yet they only won 6 games. That's pretty hard to do, to have that type of turnover luck and only win 6 games. So, I'm pretty anti-Giants, and I just think that Minnesota is an undervalued team, that I have them closer to a league average team than maybe the market does. So give me the fighting Sam Darnolds in week 1.
Yeah, let's go Sam Darnold, baby. Finally going to reach his potential here in year, what is it, 7, 8 for him?
I'm a big Kevin O'Connell guy. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, if you remember last year, Nick Mullins was having games where his over-under was like 270 passing yards. So, like, if Kevin O'Connell, he's a little bit of a quarterback whisperer, in my opinion. So if Darnold's ever going to play well, it's probably going to be this year with some pretty good weapons against a bad Giants secondary.
Yeah, Mullins was absolutely stuffing that stat sheet there for the Vikings. Okay, Hitman, we're going to leave it at that, but we will look forward to your appearance next Tuesday, breaking down the week 1 card, getting all your favorite bets. So we will see you then. Best of luck with all your handicapping.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you next week, Joe.
Yes, sir. The man. Pumped to have that guy back. Okay. Over 1,200 live viewers right now tuned in across YouTube and X. Live chat, very active today. Drop in. We're trying to build a little bit of a community here. If you're watching the replay, hit up the comment section right down there. Let us know what you like in the NFL this season. Let us know what you like tonight in Major League Baseball. Speaking of Major League Baseball, let's get into it. Let's bring in our guy, the man with the smile and all of sports betting. Jingles, we combined to go 4-1 yesterday.
We crashed the board. 3-0 from you, right? Like, and some big plus money guys, right? Freed plus 145. Yeah. I had Keller plus 145 as well. It was a beautiful board. It was no sweat. The Freed one was super interesting, right? If all you're hoping for is that the game gets started again, because the rain was bad and they did start it. He came out, he was dealing again, but they shut him down at 5. So that was a good win there for sure. Big plus money.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about that when you're on the right end of a rain delay, and he did come back, and he was pitching pretty good. But the fact that it had been, many hours since the start of the game, I think that absolutely helped us out on that one. So some plus money there. Had some plus money with the Blue Jays. We went over on their team total plus 114 yesterday. So let's start there with our 5 combined picks for Major League Baseball. Going to go right back to the UL. We're going to Fenway with the Toronto Blue Jays going over their team total of 4.5. We're sticking with the hot bats here. And the Jays, with nothing to play for, no pressure whatsoever, they're finally coming out. That's the Blue Jays for you. But it is what it is. And they are second in OPS and first in home runs over the last 2 weeks. 5 or more runs scored in 6 of their last 7. 15 total runs scored in their last 2 games. And this is not a pitching situation to slow them down here tonight. Let's start with Boston's bullpen. I've been highlighting them a lot over the past couple of weeks. Their bullpen has been absolute bullshit. One of, if not the worst in baseball, 28th in ERA over the last 2 weeks. 6 innings pitched yesterday. And that's notable because the man on the mound, Cooper Criswell, starting for the Red Sox, this is not a guy who really goes deep into games. He hasn't thrown more than 4.2 innings in over a month. So I think the Blue Jays are going to score over 4.5. They might do the bulk of that towards the end of the game here. So back to the well with the Blue Jays. No pressure.
Criswell has a strikeout total of 2.5, Joe. That's where his skill set is too. And I got on Uriel Rodriguez. His out total today opened at 12.5.
Yes.
Which is an interesting one. Obviously, he's like an 85 pitch pitcher, but that's a little low, and we jumped on that.
Indeed. Okay, so let's go to Chicago, where we will target Andrew Heaney taking on the Chicago White Sox. And so the White Sox, 4-33 in their last 37. We know how bad this team is, but from a betting perspective, like often, I'm guessing they were the underdog in the majority, if not all, those games. 26 of those 33 losses came by 2 or more runs. So one of these situations tonight, the Rangers not a great team, but you can get them -1.5. It's plus money there. So maybe something to look at there. But you're targeting Andrew Heaney on the bump here for the Rangers. What do we got?
Yeah, it's an under. And we said it yesterday. When people are running out first thing in the morning and trying to fade bad teams, you're probably not going to sit there and get great value on it anyway. Like the books aren't going to get caught with their pants down, putting a bad line on anything to do with the White Sox. But there's usually some value on the other side. Andrew Heaney is a guy who has gone under this number in 8 of his last 9 starts and has thrown for 86 or fewer pitches in 5 of his last 8. He doesn't go deep. That's the thing. And there's obviously the perception about the White Sox, but 17.5 -135 on the under. I know that's a lot of juice for some people, but the 16.5, because the market's going that way, is available at -105 too. There's rain. There's another green check mark projected. And we're seeing 90-degree heats pretty much across the East Coast, even some hundreds. So this is a spot where short leash guy comes into a market versus that has a lot of public perception on it. Should be easy for him to get, but he just doesn't have the leash to go. So laying the juice at -135, but if you're not that person, jump on the -105 at 16.5 as well, because he could just go his 15 outs and call it a day, even if it's at 80, 85 pitches.
Indeed. Okay, next up, let's go to Milwaukee, where the Brewers are playing host to the San Francisco Giants. And I'll be targeting Brewers starter Tobias Myers. Do we have any Tobias Myers fans watching the show today? Maybe you will be one after this performance tonight if you were tailing this bet. We're going to go under 2.5 earned runs for Myers, -130. He's been great lately. He's been perfect against this number over his last 7 starts, a 1.83 ERA with a 1.07 whip in this span, 1 or fewer earned runs in 3 of his last 4 at home. And some of this has probably been aided to him having a quick hook, which isn't rare for him, below 90 pitches in 4 of his last 6 starts. So a shorter outing, that could help us here. Let's get him out of here early here tonight. Taking on a Giants team, I think he can have success against San Francisco. Kind of light hitting, in a little bit of a slump right now. A 675 OPS over the last week, striking out at a very high percentage. So we'll take Tobias Myers under 2.5 earned runs. Next up, so Jack Flaherty, one of my favorite pitchers in Major League Baseball. Good for him getting traded to the Dodgers. Let's see him pitching the playoffs here. Taking on the Orioles. So before I even looked at the number, you go through and you handicap the game, and I'm thinking, hey, this might be a good spot to back the Dodgers playing at home against another good team. Nope. They're a pretty big favorite around, I think it was around -190 or something like that. Taking on an Orioles team really breaking down at the wrong time of the year here, especially the pitching staff. Dodgers red hot at home right now, 8-1 in their last 9 games at Dodger Stadium. And you have a play for the game. What do we got?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the money line price has a lot to do with Cole Irving starting for Baltimore. And obviously, so he's a lefty. And we talked about it before. It's really funny. The books value the lefty on lefty like it's like the hardest matchup in all of baseball, because you get the lefties. You get Ohtani, you get Soto, you get J-Ram too, but he's a switch hitter. But like guys like that, Ohtani is plus money for 2+ bases today, which is insane. And you'll see the bullpen. So that's a great one off the hop. But here's another one. Jack Flaherty, under 17.5 outs, plus 125. It's in that wheelhouse of under 17.5 outs with good pitchers and that plus 125 to plus 155 range that I like. A lot of it has to do with Jack Flaherty using up his pitches to get those strikeouts, because that's what we've seen. LA was off yesterday, which is a massive thing. That bullpen has been reset, and Dave Roberts does not love running his pitchers out, especially with a big playoff run coming. And since his 4 starts coming over, he hasn't really seen that tough a competition. Oakland, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Seattle. And he's gone under this in 3 of those starts. The only over being his first game versus Oakland, where he went 18 outs on the dot. So the ceiling's low to begin with, and then add in 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out at Dodger Stadium. There's a lot to like at this. Call it a coin flip, a plus 125 at a coin flip. I'll take it.
Okay, let's wrap things up with the most provocative bet in all of sports betting. Of course, it is the walk parlay. Going to try to hit on some nice plus money here. I think we have an excellent spot for some free passes and a couple games here. Let's start with Michael Lorenzen. Pretty good here for the Kansas City Royals since coming over to them at the trade deadline, but he's still walking a lot of batters here. He's walked 2 or more, 9 of his last 10, and in 18 of 22 appearances overall. Taking on a Guardians team walking at the 4th highest percentage over the last 2 weeks against righty pitching. He faced them earlier in the season, had 4 walks in that game. So that should be the easy one. The tricky part of the parlay here is going to be Cal, the Thrill Quantrill, having at least 2 walks against the Marlins. This guy's a walk machine, though. 2 or more walks in 6 straight, and in 9 of 11 starts at home this season. Miami Marlins, not a great walk team, to be fair, but their walk numbers have been up over the past week. So hopefully we get a little bit more plate discipline from them in this one, and we can hit that parlay plus 180 walk parlay. Bet over at DraftKings at that one. Some sports books don't offer the walk prop. I usually bet them at DraftKings or Bet365 in case you were curious. Jingles, before we go, you do a great article here for us every morning, targeting some pitcher edges over at covers.com. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, just if you're looking to get into fading starting pitchers or backing them, this is done by around 9 o'clock because those markets kind of get efficient anytime after that. You're looking at guys coming off the IL like Jared Jones. This is his first start in 2 months. That's a pretty high strikeout total for a team that doesn't really want to push their pitchers, as we see with Paul Skeens. Verlander went 76 pitches in his first start back, coming back. Guess what? He looked pretty good, and they could push that number up, liking that over there. Dylan Cease pitching in 100-degree weather in St. Louis. That's a tough one for a guy who gets some pretty comfortable conditions in San Diego. We touched on Heaney. We touched on Flaherty. And Erod is a guy who he's only made 3 starts, but they pushed him a little hard in his last start, went 100 pitches. So hopefully they scale him back in that situation. So his under 1.5 walks is big plus money. I think if you're trying to find a low volume play for guys like you touched on, like Tobias Myers, a guy that's a low pitch count guy, how do you bet that? There's lots of different ways, right? You took the under 2.5 earned runs. On this part with Erod, I'm going to go with the under 1.5 just because it's plus 145.
Okay, there we have it. Covers.com in the MLB section. You're going to want to check that out. Okay, so a recap of our plays today. Blue Jays team total over 4.5. Right back to the wall for me on that one. Tobias Myers under 2.5 earned runs. We're going with the walk parlay. Plus 180 on this one. Michael Lorenzen and Cal, the Thrill Quantrill. Must be in hell pitching there in Colorado. Both over 1.5 walks. Jingles has got my guy, Jack Flaherty, under 17.5 outs. And Andrew Heaney, not a long leash for that guy. We're going to go under 17.5 outs for that. And we will be wrapping up the show, but we're going to be right back with you guys tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. Very excited about tomorrow's show. John Middlecoff will be making his debut on the show tomorrow. He'll be joining us off the top, so you're going to want to check that out. We're going to be weighing in on some of the top storylines going into the season and also getting some of John's favorite futures bets as well. Jingles will be back for Major League Baseball. Neil Parker will be with us covering PGA. Guys, if you're watching the replay, hit up the comment section right down there. Let us know what some of your favorite plays are for the NFL season. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button as well. Jingles, thank you very much for joining. Dear viewer, thank you for tuning in. Best of luck with your bets tonight, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.